attitude, the demeanor, the words coming out of Oxford, Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin leading into the Georgia game. Today on the SEC teleconference, Lane Kiffin was asked about playing a team that has a winning streak like Georgia has. 26 straight, 42 of the last 43. Here's what he said. I think it allows you to play and coach looser, not uptight or tense or stressed. I think it takes some pressure off. Being on the other side before, talking about when he was at Southern Cal, I think that as an assistant at Southern Cal when they were trying to win 3 straight national titles, I think the team with the streak has more pressure when you're the number one team or have that long streak. What do you have to lose when nobody expects you to win? Is he taking a... First of all, I kind of agree with what he's saying there. Do you guys? Just like surface level?
It feels like, generally speaking, there's more pressure on Georgia, sure. The one thing I would say is, I mean, this is a program for 2 years that has played in many, many big games and didn't appear to be affected by the presence of pressure. But still, if you had to pick which team is under a bigger microscope in terms of the result of the game, it is Georgia.
So my second question is, does it feel like just a little bit Lane Kiffin is taking a page out of the Kirby Smart playbook and telling his team nobody expects you to win, they got the better roster, you're like trying to, or is that necessary this week? I mean, coaches are always looking for a way to give their team an edge, to motivate them. Is that the right tactic this week?
I think when you're the underdog, that usually is the tactic, you know, and it's an easy sell this week because the majority of the country isn't going to buy into Ole Miss winning this game. They're gonna say, hey, Ole Miss is a good team, but going into Georgia, that's a whole different animal. And yeah, and players like to hear that. They just like to hear that. Hey, all we've got is each other in this locker room. That there's a reason every coach says it, because you can get your team to buy into it because they want to buy into it. They want to buy into the idea of we're going in there, everybody in this locker room, we're the only ones who think we're going to win, and we're going to do it. I mean, they want to buy that.
But isn't there a needle to thread in this also? Like, you want to play up, you're the underdog, you against the world, nobody thinks you can win, but you simultaneously have to sell to your team, guys, you're good enough. And not only are you good enough, you don't have to be perfect. You have to play well. You have to play really well, offensively, defensively. You may have to do something special on special teams, but you're good enough to win this football game. Like, isn't that kind of the road that you have to navigate leading up to a game like this?
Yeah, there's something to that. Yeah, you gotta both simultaneously say nobody believes we can win, but I believe we can win. That's the road you have to take.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it that people say? What we have, or what's in this room is all we got, and it's all we need, or whatever. You know, easy to motivate.
All we got, we all we need.
Now, Lane Kiffin, not a big locker room speech guy.
No,
he's just not.
Mm-mm. And team comes out. I mean, their first series offensive script has got to be studied by scientists. They're the best first opening drive team in college football for 4 years now. But I do find it interesting that he has taken that at every press opportunity this week. Free shot, nothing to lose, nobody expects us to win, that kind of stuff over and over again. It should lead to a really loose team and a loosely coached game. I mean, it felt like they were wound up so tight in Tuscaloosa that, I mean, you could have just tapped them and they would have just combusted like broken glass, you know? But
Yeah.
shouldn't be that case this weekend. The one thing that you really hope doesn't happen is that it turns into recklessness. You know what I mean? If you're so loose and so there's nothing to lose, so you might as well go for it on 4th and 4 on your own 25. That's where you hope that with how the team has played this year in close games and how they've responded to adversity, that if you get down a touchdown early, you don't feel like, well, this possession got to just do everything you can to go score right now or else the game is lost. That's the one thing that I'm overanalyzing, I suppose, but you would hope that they don't turn loose into recklessness when it comes to decision making.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the tight against Alabama thing. I was on with Cole Kubelik and Aaron Murray yesterday, and Aaron asked me about that. He's like, hey, what about the, Ole Miss not great in big game, like high-pressure situations? He mentioned the Alabama game and some other time. I was like, I get the premise of what you're asking, but I don't think it's a big game thing for Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. I think it's an Alabama thing. I think it's a Nick Saban thing. And we've talked about that on this show. I think Lane Kiffin wants so badly to beat Nick Saban and Alabama, and it drives him crazy that he hasn't been able to do it, and he puts so much into that. Now, they didn't allow that to hang over for a week this year, or multiple weeks, like it appears happened last year. And I thought his tone with that was better this year, but even in the game, I mean, if you think about the flow of the game and some of the play calling, and it was like, there's just not – it doesn't look like it's coming easy. And some of that's because of Alabama. But I think Lane Kiffin has so much respect for Nick Saban that he wants so badly to beat him, and it's almost like he needs to prove that. I haven't seen Ole Miss look the way they look against Alabama against any other team in the time that Lane Kiffin's been here.
Nope. And everything from messaging, too. I mean, act's totally different that week. I know that he trolls Jimbo, but that's an annual thing, too, at this point. So that's not out of the ordinary. And that's not to say that he doesn't respect Kirby in Georgia. He absolutely does, but it's different. I mean, there are a lot of coaches that talk about how they're friends with other coaches when they're really not. There's another coach in the SEC that does that often, it appears. Genuinely think that they are friends. Lane Kiffin and Kirby Smart they're buddies. They coach together and all that. So maybe that loosens him up a little bit, as opposed to Nick Saban being like the patriarch of modern college football. Kirby's a guy that he coached with. Spent a lot of time together, I would assume.
C-Spire text line, fine line between loose and still fighting for the ranking/pole position, not going for it on 4th and 4 on your own 25, but still playing competitively. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's fine line. Completely agree with that.
You might see some wrinkles that you haven't seen yet as well.
The way Kiffin coaches against Bama kind of reminds me of the way Mullen did when State went over there in 14. Like, that was a good State team. But they went over there and they played so conservative for the first 3 quarters that by the time they got things rolling, it was just too late. I feel like that happens with Ole Miss a lot of times too.
Real quick, they ran the Jordan Watkins play where he was like faking like he was running off the field, and then he stayed on the field and they went for the touchdown. You think they used that against A&M because they thought Georgia was more disciplined and they might not get that score?
Possible.
Just wondering. Sports Talk Mississippi.